I just killed him because of Mulligan.
As we found out in Bungie's last weekly newsletter, weapon retirement is a real possibility, and there seems to be one exception to the rule, which is raid gear specifically from Last Wish and the Garden of Salvation raid. In case anyone doesn't know what weapon retirement or gear sunsetting is, let me quickly summarize. All it really means is that any weapon or armor you get from now on has an expiration date from when the item came out, not from when you obtained it. So if a new weapon came out in Season 12, and you got it in Season 12, you would have 3 seasons, until Season 15, to use it until you cannot infuse it to maximum power, meaning that if you tried to use it in like Trials of Osiris or Iron Banner, you wouldn't have too good of a time. Now that you're caught up to speed, let's read that again. Weapons and armor from the Last Wish and Gardens of Salvation raid will be granted exceptions and will have a higher max power level. Does this mean that it will last for 3 seasons? For 4 seasons? I'm not sure. Bungie needs to be a little bit more specific, but what I do know is that the Garden of Salvation armor allows for powerful friends, meaning that for arguably the next year, I will have access to this perk before I have to find something else to replace it. While Powerful Friends is indeed a powerful mod, for the low cost of 5 armor points, you get plus 20 mobility. That's a lot of bang for your buck, no doubt. I'm more enticed by this raid armor because it's more permanent than other types of armor. For example, if even one piece of my armor was a Trials of Osiris armor set, well then I know in 3 seasons I'm going to have to replace that specific gear piece. And if in between then I am very unlucky and don't get anything to replace it, well then my entire build will be messed up. So what this means for me is that if I want permanence across the next year, then I need to only look for raid armor, since Bungie has set a precedent to say that raid armor will have a higher base max power. So across all 3 of my characters, I chose a very neutral build so that I can play most of the subclasses without getting a whole new armor set just to hit the right stat splits. As you can probably guess, because of the real possibility of gear sunsetting, I'm changing my approach to Destiny 2. I have a lot of hours in Destiny 2. It's scary how much I play this game. And yet, until recently, I still am grinding for gear, because as we find out more information as a sandbox update hits, or if I get lucky with an exotic I've been hunting for months, I can finally complete a build. So I will grind for these things because it makes playing endgame more fun. It's so cool to put all the pieces of the Millennium Puzzle together and bust it out in Trials of Osiris. That is why I play Destiny 2. But now that gear has an expiration date on it, I have to be very savvy with my time and look for, I guess, the only shitty compromise that exists, which is raid armor. And as I've been alluding to, since raid armor has a higher max power level, as long as I use raid armor from the previous expansions, it should last me to the next iteration of a raid, and as long as I get a full armor set in that raid within a season, then I'm good to go for another year. So to me, that's the best bang for my buck in terms of time, and unfortunately, it's going to turn my time investment and my effort level in Destiny 2 to very casual levels. And I guess I'm okay with that if it sells more copies at the end of the day, but if the game fails in the future because of weapon retirement, because other people go through the same grievances, then I'll say I told you so. So that's what brings us to today's video. I now have 3 builds full of Garden of Salvation, Last Wish armor, and weapons that I plan to use for the next year. So look at what I have on screen. This is what's going to be coming from my channel for the next year. The Supremacy Sniper Rifle, the Omniscient Eye. I want to use the Trophy Hunter for as long as I can, but that's going to go away in a few seasons, so I'm going to have to find a new high-impact snipe at some point, or I'm just never body-shotting again. Unless I use an exotic weapon like the Izanagi's Burden. Yes, I'm taking a lot of advantage of exotic weapons since they are permanently permanent. Eventually, my bread and butters will expire, but by then, hopefully I have replaced all of them by doing new raid content. I'm happy that we get a shotgun like Fellwinter's Lie to tide me over for the next year, but that thing is going to be very difficult to replace, so I'm already setting up a Dragon Shadow and Ophidian Aspect build just in case. If it wasn't already clear, you can tell that I am being very smart about my time usage in Destiny 2. If there's a weapon that has this like crazy RNG to get and is the best, it's Recluse 2.0, it's Prometheus Lens 2.0, it's Spare Rations 4.0 or something like that, I'm not grinding for it. I will get a single roll of it playing naturally, doing endgame things, and if that roll is a 4 out of 10, a 5 out of 10, or a 6 out of 10, I'm calling it quits, because at the end of the day, I can complete most of the endgame activities with very mediocre gear. My future content will also parallel the sentiment that I really want my time respected in this game, so I will be looking at future pieces of gear and what is the most bang for your buck for enjoyment, and direct you guys to that. No longer will I look for god rolls, no longer will I go for a very fringe build. I will use what I can, enjoy the game, but as a result, ultimately take a really casual approach. This also means that for gear reviews and whatnot, I will be recovering accounts since that makes the most of my time. And if I had to rate it overall right now, my proportion of time spent gaming, I would say 70% of it is Destiny 2. Another 20% of it is Phantasy Star Online 2, and then 10% for everything else. If gear sunsetting happens, I realistically seeing that flip. It's going to be 80% PSO2, and then 20% D2, 10% everything else. Thank you guys for watching the video. Let me know what you're bringing to the next couple seasons, and if you're taking this same bang for your buck raid gear permanence approach as I am. Or if you're just sitting out entirely. That definitely sends a message if you're not a fan of gear retirement. But if you are, have fun on the loot treadmill.